Today, we're telling a story that's been preserved not in a museum behind glass, but out in the wild heart of Maine. We're going to talk about the B-52 Memorial on Elephant Mountain. You know, some places just seem to hold a memory. Our story starts in one of those places, a really rugged, beautiful, and remote peak called Elephant Mountain. For decades now, this wilderness has silently guarded the wreckage of a Cold War bomber, and in doing so, it's transformed a crash site into a really powerful place of remembrance. So, to really understand why this place is so significant, we have to go back, way back to a cold winter day in 1963. Let's walk through what happened on that final fateful flight. Okay, so the crew was on what should have been a pretty routine training mission, flying low to test out the plane's radar. But as they were flying over Maine, they hit this pocket of just extreme turbulence. We're talking forces so violent that a critical part of the plane's structure just failed. It was catastrophic. The massive bomber just fell from the sky, crashing into that unforgiving winter landscape below. The key detail here, the thing that's almost impossible to imagine, is what failed. The vertical stabilizer, that's the huge tail fin, was literally ripped clean off the aircraft. The sheer power of the weather they flew into is just staggering. It was sudden, it was violent, and for the aircraft, it was unsurvivable. You know, the loss of this B-52 wasn't just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call. The investigation that followed led directly to major engineering reinforcements for the entire B-52 fleet. It made a famously tough aircraft even tougher. So the lessons learned from this crash, well, they almost certainly saved lives in the years that followed. But beyond the mechanics and the military history, this is, at its heart, a human story. A story about the 9 men on that flight. Nine crew members. An entire team, and every single one with a family, a history, a future. When we talk about events like this, it's so important to remember the individuals at the center of it all. It's really important to remember them by name. These are the 9 crewmen who were aboard that B-52. Captain Gerald Adler, Lieutenant Colonel Dante Bulli, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Simpson Jr., Major William Gabriel, Major Robert Hill, Major Herbert Hansen, Captain Charles Lester, Tech Sergeant Michael O'Keefe, and Major Robert Morrison. So of those 9 crew members, 7 were tragically killed in the crash. But in what can only be described as an absolute miracle, 2 men survived, the pilot and the navigator. They managed to eject from the disintegrating plane just moments before it hit the ground. Their story, though, was far from over. I mean, just think about this. Ejecting was just the first part of their ordeal. They landed, separately, in deep snow, in sub-zero temperatures, battered and injured. They had to survive a brutal Maine winter night on the side of a remote mountain, just waiting and hoping for a rescue that was anything but guaranteed. And that rescue, well, it was nothing short of heroic. A massive effort was launched, bringing together local Mainers who really knew the terrain, the state warden service, and Air Force personnel. They were all facing the exact same brutal conditions, that bitter cold, the heavy winds, the deep snow, all working together to find these 2 men and bring them to safety. So the rescue marks the end of the immediate event, but really, it was the beginning of the site's next chapter. It began this slow, really natural transformation from a scene of tragedy into something else entirely. And this brings us to a central question about this place. I mean, you have to wonder, right? Given the scale of this crash, why are pieces of a B-52 still scattered all over Elephant Mountain more than 60 years later? The answer really gets to the heart of what makes this memorial so unique. Well, because the site was so incredibly remote, a full cleanup was just considered unfeasible. And so, over time, what was left behind took on this whole new meaning. The forest literally started to grow up around the twisted metal. And instead of being forgotten, the site was, well, it was kind of adopted. It slowly transitioned from being just a crash site into this organic, living memorial, a place where nature and history are completely intertwined. So today, the site is accessible to the public. And that brings us to our role in this story, and the shared responsibility we all have when we visit places like this, places that carry so much historical weight. What's amazing is this memorial isn't run by the government or some big institution. It's cared for by a group of dedicated local volunteers, the Moosehead Riders Snowmobile Club. They are the stewards of this place, and they make sure it remains a site of honor. Their work involves maintaining the trails that lead to the memorial, protecting the wreckage from being disturbed, and, this is so crucial, holding an annual ceremony. This act ensures that the memory of the crew and the events of that day are actively honored year after year. It's just a powerful example of a community taking on the duty of remembrance. And so that leaves us with this final thought. The Elephant Mountain Memorial is a destination, for sure. People hike there, they snowmobile there, but it's not an attraction. It's a gravesite, and it's a testament to survival. So when a place like this becomes accessible, what is our duty? Well, maybe it's to visit not as tourists, but as witnesses, to approach with quiet respect, to learn the story, and to leave the place and its memory undisturbed for everyone who comes after us.